This movie has been up there with one of my most hotly anticipated films of the summer. The big ones that I was waiting for was Indiana Jones, which you have previously seen me review, and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which came out on the 21st. I think it actually came out on late Thursday, July the 20th. But this movie was hyped as far as they spent $100 million in the advertising budget, $100 million on the film itself, and I got caught up in the whole ad pitch of Hollywood to see it in IMAX, and I ended up paying $20 to see this. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a cold going on here. I got caught up, and I spent $20 to see this film in IMAX in my local theater here in Stanislaus County. So that being said, it has 180-minute runtime, 3-hour tour, folks, and it's long. I have mixed feelings. There's like a dichotomy of this movie in my mind, because I think part of it was the fact that it was so hyped up and I had such high hopes based off of the critic scores. It did not meet all of my expectations. So we're going to just dive right in. Rotten Tomatoes, a day after initial release, rates this movie at 94%. IMDb, 8.9 out of 10, which is very high. And even Google users thus far, 95%. It's not my favorite nuclear holocaust film. That would be reserved for Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, perhaps because this is a comedy dealing about a serious matter such as nuclear war. It is more of an appeal, and of course, Kubrick, right? I mean, what could I say? I don't have a visual aid for Oppenheimer because I don't have a lobby card and it is yet to come out on video. So I'm using Dr. Strangelove VHS as my little trinket here to talk about this particular movie. I wanted to be high scores on this. I really did. But I am 3 out of 5. Tear me apart! Rip me to shreds! Do I know what I'm talking about? I popped a button here. Acting, phenomenal. Shot in 65mm, large format IMAX and Panavision. First time that 65mm IMAX was used to shoot black and white. And that is my first problem with this movie. And I was reading the Wikipedia documentation on production. He kind of wanted to create, Christopher Nolan wanted to create this separation of timelines, with certain timelines from the perspective of the Cillian Murphy, aka Robert Oppenheimer, in his timeline being in color, and then the opposing timeline of this Strauss character played by Robert Downey Jr. being in black and white. And they kind of interjected these timelines throughout the film instead of just having a continuity timeline. And that really bothered me. Just kind of like if you watched my review on the Wes Anderson movie, Asteroid City, he kind of did that too. Oh my gosh. And they did it the same way. He did these alternate views where it was like the play of that film was in color, and then there was this outside other viewpoint from the people writing the play in black and white, and Christopher Nolan kind of did the same thing here, and it really bothered me. And another thing that he really did was he used a lot of heavy soundtrack and booming kind of metallic sounds and explosions to kind of emphasize, which did come across very good on IMAX sound system. But I felt like a lot of the time where it could have just been the characters and dialogue and normal background noise, he kind of stepped on a lot of the scenes by overdoing the soundtrack, where there was like no quiet moments in the film. It was just like heavy laden soundtrack just pushing you along throughout all these pivotal moments, and it didn't let you just marinate with the characters and the situation that was happening, which I felt like, for example, P.T. Anderson kind of lets some of the scenes just play out with the characters and the cinematography. If I think of the movie The Master, he does use this heavy soundtrack too in that movie, but I feel like he knows when to kind of interject a soundtrack, and Nolan kind of had his soundtrack step on a lot of the dialogue where it was not effective for me, and that really bothered me. But like I mentioned earlier, the other thing that kind of pushed me down into the threes was the continuity switch, which I get it. I see why he was doing that in the Wikipedia article that I read. It was kind of very thorough about that, but I didn't like that. That's just me personally, right? Obviously, critics are loving this movie and they're foaming at the mouth. $100 million budget, large format. I did like the fact that there was very little CGI, if any. It was all practical effects, which I really liked. But there is one thing, and if you watched any of my videos, Vince, huge shout out to Vince in Salt Lake City and his wife, Faith. They know that I'm a huge stickler for period correct. You should have me as an advisor for your period correct film to make it feel legitimate. Another huge shout out for P.T. Anderson as well. He does a very good job fitting the period where you feel like you're immersed in it. And how hard is it to get a 1940s high school yearbook and see what kind of eyewear they're wearing? Sometimes in this film, the eyewear glasses would be perfect to the period, and other times you could tell that they just kind of got lens crafters, kind of looks like the period, but it's modern lens crafters glasses, and you're looking at something in the 30s and 40s, and it just really started to get to me because it was multiple times where these characters would have glasses that were definitely not anywhere to the period of the 40s or 50s, and it drove me absolutely nuts. Kind of like the movie Moonrise Kingdom. It's supposed to take place in 1965, and they have a 1968 Dodge station wagon as one of the primary focal points of the movie. This movie blew it with the eyewear. It's not that hard. I don't know why there are people that would do the research of how authentic it was supposed to be. Anyway, that really bothered me. And I don't want to say that pushed my review into the threes. The other thing, this is going to sound really weird, but as I'm sitting there, I kept thinking of the TV show, and I get it. People are like going into this movie and coming out like, oh my God, that was a horror movie. It's the horrible view of the nuclear war, and should we have even used the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And you know what? I'm not going to get political in this review. We'll leave that to the historians and the scholars and the philosophers to decide. Yes, it was horrible. Nuclear war is evil. It's terrible. Whatever. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just talking about the technical aspects of the film and other things that I feel like was so in your face to show. I kept thinking of the TV show Big Bang Theory, or as my wife likes to call them, Our Friends, because we binge watch all 11 seasons of that show, and I'm ashamed to admit that I own the box set. And I kept thinking of Jim Parsons' portrayal of Sheldon, and I saw a lot of that vibe of a guy, of Sheldon, in the Robert Oppenheimer guy, and they wanted to give him humanity, so they would interject these incredibly graphic sex scenes of him and this girl that Florence Poe, if I'm pronouncing, I don't know how to pronounce the last name. I'm not even going to attempt to. They were these graphic sex scenes that they would interject, and I felt like they were kind of trying to get it to show his humanity. Maybe I'm wrong, because he was like so brilliant and so kind of like Sheldonish. But then they would kind of like try to bring in his humanity, and it was like, whoa, did I really need to see that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned. It bothered me. I can't explain it. It just felt like it was unnecessary. Now, interesting fact. So this movie is adapted from a 2005 book called American Prometheus, and Sam Mendes was originally attached to direct this film, and then that never panned out. And Christopher Nolan had wanted to make another science fiction movie where, like, what if we could unravel the past and put the toothpaste back into the tube, is the quote that I read about the nuclear bomb. But then at the end of the shooting of Tenet, Robert Pattinson, as a rap gift, gave him the speeches, a book on the speeches of Robert Oppenheimer. So then he read that, and then he thought, okay, maybe I could do a true-to-life biographical film on this person. And then he eventually read American Prometheus and decided he was going to adapt that to the screenplay, which is what the film is based upon. So it's kind of interesting that And, you know, the Tenet movie, it came out during the pandemic. This is another side note. This is his first film not put out by Warner Brothers. He had a falling out with Warner Brothers, and this movie ended up going on to Universal because Warner Brothers split the release of Tenet during the pandemic between streaming straight to HBO and in theaters, and that really pissed him off. And he is really a big advocate of going to seeing the movie in theater and film. So he is no longer affiliated with Warner Brothers because that choice, and as we can see now, the theater system is kind of like not the same as it used to be because distribution and a lot of stuff's going straight to streaming, and I know that loses a lot of impact for me. I had to fly all the way to Salt Lake City to see The Irishman with my friend Vince because it wasn't playing locally, and a lot of these shows, just Apple TV and all that stuff, I don't know. But I did like seeing this movie in theaters. I did like seeing it in IMAX, but overall, like, the acting was good, the cinematography was good, but there was just like production choices and authenticity of costume that really bothered me. I'm being particular. It's just my opinion. So I would say it's a good movie, but it's not like the best movie I've ever seen. If that makes sense. I'd like to hear your comments too. If you're a friend of mine, reach out direct. If not, comment down below. Until next time, go to the movies. And the next movie that I'll probably review in theaters will be Greta Gerwig's Barbie, because I really enjoyed her films. Even the Little Women movie, I know that some people that are kind of like purist with that didn't, and my mom didn't enjoy that. But anyway, this movie was another kind of, they wanted you to see it together because they were both Universal releases. They were calling it Barbenheimer, which there's a bunch of million memes out there and everything. Loved Cillian Murphy as Robert Oppenheimer. I liked all the actors, even Robert Downey Jr. was that sleazy guy that he played. That is one angle that the movie kind of had that I'll close with this, and then I'll wrap it up because we're running long here. It kind of had an anti-government, do you trust the government type of vibe. Because like this guy was like a super sciencey, nerdy guy, and he created this whole super team to help build the bomb before the Nazis did. And then the government just takes it and runs with it, and then you're just kind of sidelined. And there's like a whole thing about JFK too that I'm not going to get into. Watch the movie, and they'll just get rid of anybody that stands in their way. And your government doesn't care about you, basically. They're just this big blob that wants to consume everything, whether it's the feds, the IRS, you name it, folks. Big Brother's watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.